product manager and project manager at ATDW. We've just implemented, I say just, but it's been a couple of months, the new ATDW online product. And I had an oversight role in that area, specifically looking after the product and its direction and translating requirements and all things required to complete the delivery of that. So that's been delivered in February of this year. And obviously we're going through a process of improvement and fixing and finding bugs as and when they happen as well. As all good programs, software or otherwise, I want to do, they generally have bugs at the time of launch. Abby, you could probably mute. I can't mute the individuals, but if you could mute those guys, that'd be great. Just to minimise background noise, that'd be awesome. So welcome to those that have just come along. Yep. And what I'll be doing today is just walking you through, I guess, the high-level elements of the product. I interchange. I sometimes call it the product. I also call it a platform. I guess platform's a broader term that's used for the housing of a lot of information, not just one single business information. So I use those terms interchangeably. So I'll be focusing a little bit on the login and what you can expect to see there, both as an individual business owner, but also if you manage, not sure if anyone here does, but if you manage multiple businesses, you'll get a taste or at least a short look at what that looks like in the product as well. We'll also look at and touch on user and organisation management, so how and what that looks like in the platform and how that differs from what you might have had experience with in the past. So that's a slight variation on what you might be used to as well. And then I'll get into, I guess, the detail part, which is around listings and where we really want to highlight and show off some of the great features that we've developed. So both the creation and updating of those listings and also what you can expect once you hit the submit button and what happens once that listing goes off for a review. So I'll touch on that as well and that process that our SEO partners follow as part of that. I'll also briefly explain our distribution network and how that works, and also touch on some timeframes around that. So when you hit the submit for review button, what you can expect by way of timeframes for seeing a listing live on a website. And I'll also touch on the stats page. So what we've now, and we're pretty proud of this feature, it's still, I guess, a work in progress because our websites and our distributors actually are still in the process of connecting fully on our stats page. But once it's up and running, you'll have a near real-time view of your business's performance, which is something that a lot of people have been asking us for. Okay. So again, just a reminder, any questions you've got, just drop them straight into chat and Fabi will facilitate that at the end of the process. So what I'll do now is I'll just share my screen. You'll still be able to see me. And straight away, we've got what you can see here is the platform. So each of your state tourism organisations will give you a link to the platform. I'm actually using a testing environment, so I don't break anyone's listing. And we've got some test accounts here. So what we see on the screen is just for the purposes of this workshop. So I'll make that note up front so that you're clear on what we're doing and who we're doing it with. So this is the login screen. There's a forgot your password function, pretty standard. If you don't have an account or you don't have a business listing in the platform, you're free to create that. So we also offer a registration process. So this is really an entry point for logging in, updating and managing your listing, but also if you don't have that access, you can create and register an account with your organisation details as well. Okay, but if you do have an account, you will certainly have, I expect by now or very soon, receive some sort of communication from your state tourism organisation about that. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll log in first, just as, again, using a friend from the last workshop, their login. As an operator account, we have different tiers of users. So we call you guys operators, so you're business owners of tourism product. And this particular listing, or when we land at this particular page, I guess this is what we call our dashboard. Okay, so if you're managing a single listing, that's what it looks like. Okay, and there's a few what we call to actions, which is an update, or if you'd like to add a new listing, and I'll step into that just to show you what that looks like as well. But updating the listing is completed through the click of this button here. Before I step into that though, I'll just draw your attention over to the left-hand side, which is where we've really positioned our menu for the product. I was about to say platform, but it's product and/or platform. So at the top we have the listings, which is really a navigation point for the dashboard that you see here. Sign out is at the bottom, so they're fairly rudimentary. But within those, embedded within those, is the account. Not sure how easy or well this translates through the Zoom session, but what I'm hovering over at the moment is account, and that's where you manage your organisation details and any other users and/or your user account that's attached to your organisation, and the stats page, which I mentioned as well. Okay, and I'll come to that a little bit later. So again, before I step into listing management and looking at what the listing looks like, I'll just step into the account menu or the navigation item. And really we've split this section up into your organisation is at the top, so that by default is what's highlighted. And what we have here, or what we see here, is data that's been migrated across from our old system. So in a lot of cases, these areas here, this location or address information in particular, will be empty, and we're actually hoping you guys can fill that out as a first step when logging in for the first time to your business. We also have an ABN placeholder. We've connected that to the Australian Business Register. For anyone in Victoria in particular, if you're a not-for-profit organisation, that holds some relevance, so we strongly suggest you guys provide your ABN of your not-for-profit organisation there, because that influences payments and transaction amounts and things like that. Directly under your organisation is, in this case, I'm logged in as Chris, but your user account management. So you can issue password resets. I'm logged in as this user, so I can also set or reset my password directly within the application. And also just your general personal information. At this point, it's an important one to make. This data, this information that's held here, not accessible to anyone that's using our API. So the listing and all the information you provide in the listing is certainly accessible and able to be published. But this information here is very much kept for administration purposes and STO use in terms of contact, and if you've got any password or login problems, they have access to this information. Okay, the other two sections really, I'll touch on all three of those that we see here. So we have plans, we have widgets, and we have what's called a white label. That's a fairly narrow, I'll start at the bottom. White label is a very narrow use product. It's specifically for events. So if you wish to implement a page or a site, that particular product is the means of doing that for events only at this stage. Widgets, I'll just click into that because it's quite handy. So what we have is, I guess, a widget builder. And by default, on the left-hand side, again, I'll go right over to the left on the sub-navigation, we have the widget questions that you'll be asked. So at any point, you can move through and ask and change anything within the widget creation process. So the result of filling out this information gives you a bit of code at the end of the process. I'm not sure if I can access it. There it is. And that piece of code is something that you can then drop into your own website, and you'll be displaying fundamentally what you see on the right-hand side here. So by default, we set this up as a fairly random list, but as the widget's created, it becomes more it comes in line with what's defined in that configuration area. Okay. And plans. So again, this is really about looking at, for Victorian and Queensland operators in particular, this is an area that you would click into. Because this is a New South Wales product, it's empty, but it's accessible. This is where you would be able to view your invoices. So there'd be order history buttons and options in here if you were a Queensland or Victorian user. So you also, just on the point of, I guess, invoicing, we also have a series of emails that go out with any transactions that occur on the platform. but at any point in time, you're always free and available to come into this area and view and download a PDF version of that invoice as well. Okay, I'll just delete that widget. There we go. And I'll go back to the dashboard. Again, just clicking on that top left item there. I'm going to leave stats till last because I'm not sure if this listing has any, but I certainly know one that does. And we've got some chat, which is great. And the update process. So now I'll step into, we've really covered off on the user and contact information and all of your organisation details in this menu item. We'll now just step into the listing process. So I know from this summary view that we have a tour listing here. There's slight variations across the different categories. So what we see for tour, in this case, the Sydney Hang Gliding Centre, will be different for an attraction listing or an accommodation product. But fundamentally, what we see in this orange navigation menu here is where all of the information that's been collected for your business is easily accessible. So as I showed you before, I've clicked on the update button there, and I've then exposed, I guess, the full listing and all of its sub-items that you can see here are available as well. There is a summary view, and again, you guys can click and there's really nothing you can do to harm the product, your listing, so you're free to click on these items once you have access to them. If you've already got access to them, that's great. Just a point, one of the bugs that we know about is this here, so it shouldn't look like that. We've got that in the system, so we'll be, at a future date, we'll be updating that to make it look more, a better representation of what that is, which is a service. Okay, so we have product information, which is high-level business information, and then within, in this case, the context of tours, have what we call services. So this business provides a hang gliding service, and within that is then more detail. And you'll note that the business information has been compressed behind here. So if I just click on that, we can see that it's still there, but our focus is just on the tours, in this case what we call services. So again, what we see here is ticks to show that those areas, or those panels, is what we call them, have been filled out. And areas without a tick don't currently have any information in them. Okay, so photos, one of the cool features that we've introduced is really a simplified version of photo updating or photo uploading, but also editing of those photos as well. So I'm just going to click on one here. In this case, difficult to show you the full benefit of our cropping tool, because the photo itself is at the very minimum widths of our compliant image size. But we do have a square and a landscape cropping tool, and that just allows you to set focus. I might just upload an image just to give you an idea of what that looks like. Oh, I won't update Doc Brown, he's too small. I'll just get my shuttle bus. Sorry folks, I normally have this slightly better prepared. Shuttle. There we go. Okay, so this is quite a large image, but what it allows me to demonstrate is our cropping tool. So you're able to really set focus on a particular area of the image, if that image is large enough for you to allow this cropping exercise to occur. Okay, so you can do that in both a square and a landscape kind of aspect. So we've taken away the complexity of landscapes and what we've called that button landscape. We really just require you to update a photo that adheres to, at the very minimum, these particular sizes. Again, that's 2048 by 1536, but it's again through Zoom, not sure how that looks. Okay, so again, there's other fields and information that you can provide: captions, copyrights, some alt text, which is quite important, and the photographer information. But again, if you don't have any of that, just go with the photo. Okay, and once you've uploaded it and you're happy with where things are, it's just a matter of saving that photo. Okay, so look, I won't go through each of these panels, but fundamentally there's two ways of moving or traversing through the business listing. There's both, I guess, what we'd call a wizard step, which is this skip to next step, And that allows you to, as you can see over here, it just moves you through the listing and each stage or each panel of the listing. But at any time, if you want to go back up to the top, you just click on that in the left-hand side, and that gives you, takes you straight back to the top. Okay. Some other, I guess, important points in terms of user experience. What we've introduced is a health meter. We don't really call it a health meter. It's just more of a progress bar. But in this case, it indicates how many steps. It has sort of two modes. It's how many steps are required to submit the listing for review. So we call those mandatory steps. And then once you've completed that, it tells you how many optional steps there are left to list. So that really then gives you an indication of what's left empty on the listing that you have there. So if I was to pick internet access for an example, that's currently set at 15. It now drops it to 14 optional steps and just moves that progress bar across a little bit. Okay. What you'll also notice there, and something we're also changing, this send for review button is how you submit the listing to the STO for quality assurance. It wasn't activated until I changed something on the listing. We're just going to improve that by activating this button all the time. So that's how we submit the listing and have that quality assured. Important to, I guess, make sure, and really that's what the purpose of the summary screen is just to review the listing, I guess, from a high level point of view. So these color highlights that you see here indicate that there's something not yet entered. So in this case, the listing itself has social entered, it has its website, it's got internet access, which is what I've just chosen. It's got a video, which is great. I think I've done something there in that test process just now, but it's got five photos, description obviously, location, but it doesn't have a booking URL. So if you've got a booking platform and a direct URL, that's where you'd put that. So you'll get, I guess, a visual indication of what that is and how that should be provided is either by clicking directly into that link and it will take you to the booking URL, or as I did before, if I go back to the summary, I can do the same thing just by clicking over here on the left-hand side and going to booking URL. Okay. So tours, I guess it's a good example because it's probably one of our more complex product categories. Accommodation is very similar in that we have what we call a product level, which is high-level business information, and then a service level to each listing, and that service level provides the necessary detail to market your business. So it goes into scheduling, prices, as you can see there, locations, videos, photos for the hang gliding service. Okay. If you're an attraction operator, you don't have a services. It's all just contained within one large block of work. And I'll touch on that shortly as well with a quick product creation just to show you what attractions looks like as an example. One final thing is the cog, just within actually two final things. So one is the cog. That allows you to deactivate. We don't want you to deactivate, but you can do two things within the listing context. It's request a disable of the listing or the business itself. For whatever reason, there's a legitimate purpose for that, so we've built that function in. But also remove the service. So in this case, we only have one service. It's called hang gliding. That would be how you'd achieve that. So it's kind of a little bit of a disconnect from what we have in here where we don't necessarily have a delete function, but that cog serves that particular purpose of removing parts of the listing or the whole listing itself. And also if you've got a need to manage or purchase or update translations, at the moment we don't allow you to supply your own translations. It's a paid service. That would be the process, or that would be I guess the entry point for any kind of translation activity for your listing. And the paid service at the moment is only for Chinese, simplified and traditional. So the two, I guess, variants of the Chinese written language is the two languages that we support at the moment. The final part before I sort of step out of here and just show you quickly the attraction listing, as opposed to the tool listing that we see here, is this little logo at the top and the contact us. So what happens, I guess this is a call to action. If you've got any questions or queries and you're not sure who you need to contact, that's a very clear visual indicator of who who we'd like you to contact, and then beside that is the contact details for that organisation. In this case, it's, I've forgotten, Destination New South Wales. So Destination New South Wales, we've put their email address there, and also their phone number. Okay, so we're using the one platform across the whole country. All the state tourism organisations are the supporting agencies in terms of your listing and the management of your listing. So again, if you've got any questions and you're not sure who you need to contact, I'd be looking in the top right-hand corner and then clicking on that Contact Us button that we activated before. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to show you what the review process looks like. I'm going to send that for review. Okay. So what we have here is just a message to say that that's been done. At the point where you send it for review, you don't have access to it. You'll note here we don't have an update button anymore, but the status, as you can see here, is that it's now pending with QA for review. So until that's published, or if it's quite a harsh term, but if it's rejected, if it's turned back around and some instructions or advice are given on how better to improve your listing before it can be published, that button won't be activated. Okay, so I'll log in as an STO. In this case, it'll be Destination New South Wales, just to show you just briefly what they see on their side of things. Before I do that, though, very quickly, add new listing. So you all have access to this. There's a link there to eligibility guidelines in terms of what we do accept into the platform. That's just a PDF document download. Okay, and these are the types of categories that we currently collect. Okay, so I did mention that we had a tour. The hang gliding centre was the tour category. We also have attractions, accommodation, events. If you're an event coordinator, that's where the coordination of those events would occur. Restaurants, which is food and drink, and also bars. General services is a fairly broad catch-all product category, but that's, again, the details of that will be captured in that. Eligibility guidelines. Hire is about cars, kayaks, push bikes, anything like that, but it has to be a separate and standalone business, as opposed to if you've got a couple of bikes and you run an accommodation business, I probably wouldn't create a separate listing for that. Okay. Tours and transport. So again, what I'll just do is click on the attraction listing. And again, we have a blank, quite literally a blank listing. So at the moment, nothing's been entered. And you can see up here, we've got 5 mandatory steps to list. Okay, so again, left-hand side, it shows you how the listing is constructed, I guess. And you'll note the absence of services as opposed to tours before that had services there. Also, we have a tick which indicates something's been migrated or transposed across during the creation process. So we'll just have a look at that shortly. But also pluses. These indicate mandatory requirements. So these 5 mandatory steps that you see here roughly correlate to these 5 items that you see on the screen. Okay. So in this case, it'll just be a test attraction. All right. There's all good demonstrations. I copy and paste some text. Okay, and that's then updated our listing name that you can see up here. It's also updated our mandatory steps to list to be 3, which is now directly related to these 3 items that you see here. So I could click next step. That'll take me into, as it says, quite rightly, the business information tag, which was the next step. But it's not mandatory, and if I don't have that, I'll just go straight to attraction type. So in this case, spas and retreats sounds good to me. And I'll move into photos. I'll use my shuttle bus. So I'm moving pretty quickly now. It's quite a large photo, so it just takes a little while to upload. There we go. Now, if I want to just modify how that looks, as I said before, we can do that with our cropping tool. Okay. All right, location. There's something in there. Okay, so what's happened is that the organisation address has been carried over. So what I mentioned earlier within your account menu was to update your organisation address. It's really for that reason, because if you wish to use your organisation address, which is fine in a lot of cases, it needs to be filled out. So in this case, it's really not a useful address. So 5 Main Street. And because I'm sitting in Queensland, Google knows that, as Google does, and it's only presenting me with Queensland addresses. But if you're sitting in Darwin, or if you're sitting in Perth, you'll get a bunch of Darwin or NT or Perth addresses presented here when you start typing. So in this case, I'm just going to hope that Byron Bay has a main street. I'm going to go with that. So what it's done is found something in Byron Bay, the clock tower. If I wanted to modify where the pin is located in on my listing, you're free to do that. You can move that around if it's picked up the wrong location and you need it to be 26 Shirley Lane, you're able to do that directly from within the application now as well. So that's quite a neat little function that we've built as well. Okay. Finally, again, phone. Again, it's part of the mandatory. So 0731217760. That's our office address. I've gone one too many. There we go. Now that's ready for review. So it's flicked over from one mandatory step and it's activated. In this case, as I mentioned, we're going to fix this. It's activated the send for review button. So if that's all I needed to do for an attraction, I'd go right ahead and submit that for review. Okay. So again, because the address was Byron Bay, it's derived our login section up here. Apologies, guys. You know how to turn that down. There we go. And again, I won't send this one for review. Okay. So at any time you can come back and you can see that we've got our test attraction. That's in a draft state. We haven't submitted anything yet. That's still pending with QA for review. I'll just touch on the stats before I leave this page here. Now, because we're running on a test environment, this should be empty. It is, which is great. So what I'm going to do is just flick over to a listing in our production systems that's actually captured, has been capturing consumer data. So the stats pages the metrics that are presented on that particular page are of consumer activity. In a default state, it's over a 30-day period, but it does allow you to define whatever time period you'd like in there. And this is, as I mentioned, a very near real-time presentation of metrics. I think it lags behind by about 4 hours. So if a consumer's hitting it at midday, that number will be presented here at about 4 p.m. that afternoon. Okay, so I'll see if I can do this. I haven't got one handy, but I'll find one. So what you're looking at now is just an administration area. It's also what our STOs see. So they have a series of queues where states or listings, being Victoria and Queensland, have a commercial model. There's a payment queue. There's also disabled queues and a QA queue. That's where they go to, I guess, do the work of quality assurance and making sure that before they publish it, that it's fitting the guidelines that they require for that publication. Okay, I'm just going to add myself. Sydney Hilton. Why doesn't it like that? There we go. I'll just log out, log back in as myself. And I'll just stop at this point here. So this is, for those that manage multiple Google accounts, for example, this might look pretty familiar. The design pattern has pretty much been borrowed from that particular design pattern. So where you are managing, in this case, my work account is added to quite a number of state tourism organisation accounts. So if I need to operate within the Victorian context, I do that through the selection of this organisation. Okay, but what I am doing is showing you today what the metrics look like for the Sydney Hilton. As I said in the last presentation, I wish these numbers on each and every one of you. Unfortunately, they're not entirely accurate at the moment, but they do give, I guess, a visual indication of what this dashboard looks like for a listing. At the moment, Tourism Australia is sending quite a few eyes to this listing, but they're not quite sending the right numbers as a true representation of consumer page views of the Sydney Hilton. Okay, so they certainly didn't get 2,000 people looking at their listing on the 8th of April, for example. But it just gives you, I guess, sessions and users over time. And as I said, it's a default view of 30 days, but you can modify that as required. And there's also some other information that we need to correct down here. This website information is not entirely correct, but you can see for the large majority of pretty much all of them, Australia.com is the website that's sending or that's displaying the Sydney Hilton and presenting those consumer page views into this dashboard. So the consumer breakdown is fairly clear. So the United States is, and this is all collected through a Google Analytics implementation that Australia.com's completed. And every distributor that we have will be doing a similar implementation. So over time, as your listing is presented and displayed on more websites and the analytics implementation is done correctly and activated, you'll expect to see more information come through here, okay, by way of website information. Okay, so that's just a very brief breakdown of, I guess, the stats area. The final part of the session just is around the QA process. So as I mentioned, I'll just log out here because that's real data. As I mentioned earlier, we have a process where you submit for review, and in the case here, as we've done that submission, it's pending QA. So there's a QA process in place. So what that does is takes up to 48 hours, and at that point, the publication occurs. When it's then displayed, or the new information is displayed on a website, can then take up to another week or two, depending on when those distributors, as we call them, or websites, pick up the new information from our web service. Okay, so I just have to wrap it there. I think I've hit my time. So if there's any questions, I'm sure there have been come through on chat. I haven't been monitoring that, but I'm free to take those now. Fabi, did you want to?
I just had to unmute myself, sorry.
Switch your mic on.
All right, so if anyone's got a question, please feel free to just chat them to us. We've got one question from Angela. Can you see it, Jason, or would you like me to read it?
I think it's an everyone question.
Yeah, are the widgets more area specific with the new platform? Previously, the widget listed Gippsland as a whole, a 600 plus square kilometre area, is too broad location for us to be able to use the widget. Hoping it's been narrowed.
I hope so too, but I wasn't intimately involved in this area of the application. But in terms of locations, you have the possibility of just selecting a state. We've given the capability to select just the state-based information, or you can narrow it by postcode. Okay, so that may be, we did have some region, actually within region, so Gippsland, if we go to Victoria, the default selection is Victoria and all regions of Victoria. But if I wanted to add specific region, I can't see Gippsland. So Gippsland is there, but if that's too broad, I'd probably suggest going with the location by postcodes. Again, if you know the postcodes, you can.
And you just add one by one, Jason? Is that right?
Yeah. So if I wanted to Brisbane, because I know Brisbane, the 4000 postcode, you can see it's starting to filter. So 4001. So now the results are
excellent. So that might be a good workaround.
Yeah.
Angela?
Yep.
Does that answer your question, Angela? If you're muted, you can just chat. Oh, good. She says, perfect, thank you.
Perfect.
Awesome. Then there was a second question, is there any news on bulk update feature? And how do we find translation prices?
So I'll answer the translation prices first. I'll just go back to the listing. I'll go in here. So if we manage translations, okay, so what has to happen as an initial step, we need to have this submitted for review. Once it's published, I suggest coming back in and then the description that you've added and the name that you've added up here will become available. What I'll do is I'll QA that listing that's gone through so then we can actually see what that looks like. But the prices are presented at that point of, I've logged in as an operator, sorry.
Nice and fast.
Oh, yes, I've got a password manager. I don't know if anyone...
Oh, no, I mean the speed of the load. Oh, yes, we use 1Password. If anyone's not using a password manager, I think it could be
really makes
themselves 2 hours a week.
Yeah, it makes life much easier. That's for sure.
There is actually an article on Tourism Tribe Forum.
Perfect.
About password managers, if anyone's interested.
Yeah. Okay, so that's been published. I've logged in as an STO. Just going to log back in as the actual Chris at Hang Gliding again. So now you'll see here that the listing is live. So we go into update and manage translations. You'll see there that we've got some improvements here. We're not entirely happy. We're not happy with that at all, in fact. But there's some improvements here around labelling and making that a little bit more friendly to the eye than just an ID, as the case is here. But the selection of that presents each of the options in terms of translations. Okay, so it's just a buy now process, and that triggers the transactional part of the platform. All right. The other question was, any news on bulk update feature? That sounds like, well, it could be two things, and I'm not sure if you've got a mic. I'm not sure who Seacox is, but there's two ways I could answer that. One is the contribution API, and that's how we've activated, I guess, a feature within the platform that allows, at this stage, STOs and ATDW to bulk import listings. For an example, New South Wales has an arrangement with New South Wales Parks and Wildlife Service, so we're talking with them at the moment about how to use that feature or that function to import national parks and nature reserves and things like that directly into the platform. The other part, or the other alternate to that question, which is another area of the platform, is around probably an STO function. So I'm not sure what access or permission level you guys have there, but bulk updating of listings is a function that STOs have access to, and it's really about tags, which is again something you guys won't ever see because it's not accessible to you guys. So I hope both of my answers, or at least one of them, helped in that area.
Thank you.
If not, let me know.
If there's no other question, I might have one for you, Jason. What happens if your images are smaller than the new required size? So I know that one of them can be, you need at least one that is of the higher resolution. What if you haven't actually gone in there yet and changed them? What happens?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for it, Fabi. So I'll log in and I'll actually show what that...
about 10 times a day.
Yeah. Oh, good. So I'll just log in as New South Wales. So I'll have a look at their QAQ first. Okay, no luck there. I'll just go back to that QAQ. Oops. See if I can find another listing.
Yeah. So you're logged in as an STO, yeah?
Yeah, I'm logged in as an STO at the moment. So hoping one of these. Oh, they're too good. They've updated all their listings. But
I'll go have a look at some businesses in Agnes Water, I'm sure. I'm sure we're not all up to date.
Agnes Water, okay. Let's have a look. I'll just log in as a different organisation because New South Wales doesn't have access to that area. They have access to their own state listings.
Okay, for example, the Blues Roots and Rock, we may have not updated. Oh, it's inactive. Oh, interesting. Oh, because it's finished. Yep. These Agnes Water. We'll have a look at the Agnes Water listing. Last update. Oh, that's a different. That's just something called Agnes.
Oh, is it?
But yeah, but doesn't matter. Is that one a good example?
No, it's not because they've
updated their images.
These guys are on the ball, which is great. So I'll just go back. Agnes Water?
Yeah, try that one. Oh, that's JPDL. They probably have updated it.
Looking like it. And that's a destination, so it's...
Yeah, so they would have managed it.
So, yeah, it'd be great to...
find one?
Yeah, just to demonstrate what that looks like. Maybe everyone in Agnes Waters is...
What about everyone online? Have you all updated your images? Otherwise, we'll... have a look at these dates. February. VIC is probably... Well, triathlon.
Maybe.
Yeah, see the beach club. They're probably onto it.
Yep. Okay. So what we do, we don't. So we've migrated all of the listings across. So when you land for the first time, this is the summary view. That's why it's deactivated. And we've overlaid these images with please replace this image. So they're still accessible and they're still publishable.
Yeah.
But for you, for any operator now or business owner to be able to make a change on this listing, they'd also need to update at least one of these images.
Oh, right. So it doesn't actually negatively impact them whilst they haven't updated to the new standard, but it prevents anyone from making any update prior to putting at least one image to the right dimensions.
Yep.
Excellent.
Okay. So yeah, that's what we've done. We've overlaid that just with I guess a call to action. We're hoping you'll have the originals of these lying around and they'll be that right size.
Yeah, the issue is not many people have them in that size.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay.
They'll have to take new ones.
Only one. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think there was any new questions, so we may let you go and finish on time.
Okay.
On behalf of Tourism Tribe, I'd like to thank you for your time and having run 2 of these sessions. I think it's been very useful for everyone, and we've recorded it, so you'll be able to watch it and we'll be able to point operators to it.
Yeah, and that's great. Happy to...
fantastic.
Yeah, happy to be involved, and if there's any follow-up questions, happy to take those on notice and get back through the Tourism Tribe.
Thanks very much, Jason. All right, bye everybody. Thanks.
Thanks everyone.